No, chaps, I'm really glad to have you both on, because what I wanted to talk about was literally the word automation in association with Google Ads, because a lot of the conversations I'm having at the moment around sales and with store owners and marketing managers, I think there's a bit of a misconception around what automation in Google Ads actually means. So I wanted just to bring you both on. You're both, 5-year plus experience within PPC itself. First question is, what is automation in Google Ads? What does it mean?
I guess if we're going to look at it as a really top level thing, the idea is that, Google Ads, it's built around your auction and your keywords and so on. You decide, what searches you want to try and appear on and what you're willing to pay for it. And where the automation, as it's called, comes in is this idea that once upon a time, you are managing, especially those bids, kind of by hand. So something, well, you might bid a bit more, or if something's doing poorly, you'll pull back a touch.
Mm-hmm.
And really, where the sort of the smart bidding has come in, and this when they're on about automation like that, is that some of that is you can basically delegate it to sort of Google's computers to do at this point.
Okay.
And yeah, to mix levels of results, and you can kind of set your own targets within that. And it's taken something that used to be kind of a large part of what we do, me and Joe, as our job, and it's leaving that to an algorithm as opposed to doing it quite so much by hand, I think.
Okay, so let's take it a step back. You've decided you want to advertise on a certain keyword in Google. What you would have to do is set your bid for that keyword. If it's performing particularly well or particularly poorly, you would have to manually adjust that bid prior to any automation that went on. Is that right?
Yeah. Spot
on. So in terms of automation, why has it seen such kind of an uptick in the past few years? Is it better than humans? Are we going down the IT versus humans kind of route here? What is going on?
What do you reckon, Joe? I'll let you take a bite first.
One thing I think, adoption's definitely increased. From my experience, all the accounts that I've worked on, speaking to colleagues, people in the industry, the adoption of smart bidding is definitely increasing. And I think the reason for that is that it improves all the time. So the more data it has over a longer period of time, the better performances it can generate for clients. So I think the fact that it's improving all the time is a major factor into why more people are using it. And I think with smart bidding especially, you've still got an element of control. You still set the targets, you still choose which products pull through which set campaigns and things like that. Yeah. So there is a lot of control that you still have. You're not just leaving everything to Google and you're turning your back on the account. There's still a lot of optimization that goes on within the campaigns and outside of the campaigns as well. So
okay. I think this is where the misconception comes from, really, because a lot of the conversations I have, potentially with a marketing manager, maybe it's the business owner, whoever it might be, they'll say, fucking hell, X and X agency is sat back on their asses and the whole account's automated and they're sat there doing nothing and collecting a pretty handsome fee for it.
Yeah.
What would you say, Joe Foley, to those guys? Like, is it literally just set it up and forget it, or what goes on beyond that?
I'll just say it's not true at all. I've had this conversation with clients in the past. It's been so frustrating to sort of get it through, but I think that's part of the challenge of account managers as well. It's sort of communicating that and explaining. So if your client is unhappy about it, it's because you're not explaining the benefits of it and what it can do to help. Like I say, you need to set a target. You can adjust that target depending on the data that's come through. So give things a bit of a push for extra volume, or you can rein it in a little bit to try and make it a bit more profitable. So you can use that that data to your advantage, and then it means you can focus time on other things. Obviously, Be Found, Be Chosen as an agency have a massive push on sort of feed enhancement. So it means that you can do other tasks in other areas that can help with overall performance as well. It's not.
as with anything, it's using the automation wisely, isn't it? So if there's an
Yeah.
area of your job that can be automated, that is literally just taking up your time, if your time is particularly valuable, you should be using it in other areas, is what I'd.
Yeah.
It's as
Yeah,
simple as
definitely.
that, really, isn't it? Joe, Robbo, I'll give this one to you. But obviously, if you're setting up a Google Ads campaign and you would like to lean into automated bidding or other automation that might be able to go on, what's kind of the bigger picture thoughts around just marketing the business as a whole that have to go on around Google Ads as well?
Well, if you're going to automate that side of the entire account approach, then I guess it's the stuff that you're left with that's where you can really gain an edge. Because the thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, but that is ultimately true, is that if we get to a point where everyone's Google Ads bids are automated, regardless of what business you are, what industry you're in, and we'll get there. If it takes 10 or 15 years, we will get there. We're already there on Facebook. Then what becomes the differentiator? And it's that whole idea of your advertising copy and your targeting and everything that realistically can't be done by a computer anyway. And so I think if you were a business, 5 years ago that had, not the best website in the world, but you could sort of tweak the Google Ads to within an inch of its life, you could probably make it profitable for you.
Yeah.
But now you've got to have a solid website and a good offering, and you've got to make sure that the stuff that makes you stand out as a business is absolutely nailed on, because at some point that's going to be the big differentiator. And what we forget is that in everything except Google Ads, it never stopped being the differentiator. So I think if you're a wider marketer, probably not so threatening. But if you're someone that's made their living crunching numbers in Google Ads and everywhere else, it might seem a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, it's time to look at your product, your market. Are you in front of the right people at the right time, and really go back to basics, isn't it? There's
Absolutely.
no magic bullet anymore that people like to claim there is.
No, and that's the beauty of the automation, is that we get more time to do that, because all we were ever doing when we were changing these bids by hand was looking at how these things had changed over time. Is a certain audience, is a certain keyword more profitable? Okay, so we'll bid a bit more. When actually a computer can look at exactly the same data and probably do it faster in an ongoing, and actually with more bits of data than we've got. If you had the fence in your garden, right, and he turns up with a power drill, you wouldn't be like, hang on, what are you doing? Like, you're going to screw these in by hand. Like, no, let him do the good stuff. It's not we're trying to do the work in half the time. It's that you still spend an hour in the account. It's just that instead of staring at numbers that a computer can do, you spend it on that big picture, looking, like you say, at the product and the business and the offering.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so what are the things you'd have to be careful of if you were to use automation in Google Ads? Joe Fall.
For me, I would just say, make sure you're using the right bidding strategy that matches the goals that you're trying to achieve within the account. So there's no point in having a target CPA bidding strategy if you're trying to hit a certain return on investment, because those things just won't add up. You won't account for things like the price of the product and things like that. So you need to ensure that you're using the right bidding strategy. And then again, it still needs regular monitoring and tweaks. So you make a tweak to the target ROAS or target CPA. You need to give it a week to learn, for the algorithms to learn and to adapt and progress. And then it still needs tweaking from there. So it could be that you've made that change, but it's either not done enough or it's done so much that you can then change it again. So it does still need monitoring and good account management and good sort of commercial awareness for the business as well. But I would just ensure that you're using the right type of campaign, right type of bidding strategy for the goals that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
That's the main one, I think.
Any on that from you, Joe Robinson? I hate saying this because there's two bloody Joes. But what are your top tips, or what do you think people have to be careful of if they are going to start leaning into automation?
I think the big thing that springs to mind for me right now, especially in the e-com space that we're very much present in, would be the idea that you do lose a certain amount of that data that you used to be able to see and report on for yourself.
Okay.
You'll get certain bits of information. So yeah, for the uninitiated, there's a really, really important bit of reporting out of Google Ads is your search query report.
Okay.
So the idea that, yeah, we're looking for clicks on ads, and we want to know the people that clicked these ads, what was actually in their search bar, you know, regardless of how we got them, what were they searching for? And obviously sometimes you find, you know, a whole new market to get into, or you find something that's totally wrong and you want to exclude it. Well, some of the more automated ways of doing your shopping campaigns, so your product carousels across the top of the search result page, you don't get to see those search queries anymore. So in that sense, you know, the bidding's being done really well for you, but you've got to kind of make sure the targeting is right. And if you sort of try to go gung-ho and let's say your product titles aren't great, so you're going to end up appearing on a lot of searches for stuff that actually doesn't have the most to do with the stuff that you're selling, you'll never find that out. And so a lot of people I know that are doing this at a high level, they're ending up in quite a, you know, a machine learning driven position.
Yes.
But they'll manual approach for a while to get the data, to see the search queries. And then once they're happy that, yeah, okay, places where my ads are appearing are exactly where I want them to be, and you've changed, you know, like Joe Foley said, the names of titles and stuff, and that sort of that feed optimization that we push hard on here, once we know it's absolutely nailed on, then we can start having, yeah, the legwork done for us, because we know what we need to do with the time that we spend.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of that kind of doing the heavy lifting and doing the legwork, what's the long-term play here? I think we all know how Facebook ads is kind of, it's a little bit more set it and forget it, i.e. you put your credit card in and say, Facebook, go and find me some customers. I'm sure I'll have some Facebook ads people chomping at me here, but it's dead easy in theory. Is Google wanting to go down the same route? As in literally just give me a credit card, tell me what you want to sell, and it'll do it for you? Do all the heavy lifting? Yeah,
they said as much, absolutely. Over the summer, I think we talked about it actually. I'm not sure if you've baited us into this or not, Guy. But I read a book called In the Plex over summer. And it's the story of Google and how it was founded from, like, you know, Larry and Sergey in a garage somewhere all the way up to what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And when the guys that built AdWords, as it was called, wanted to, put in all these targeting measures that we kind of take as commonplace these days, Larry and Sergey were very much like, why can't we use all of our clever search data? And this is like 20 years ago. Why can't we use it to just say, give us a credit card, give us a business and an objective, and we'll just make it happen for you? And I'm very strongly of the opinion that everything we've had between then and now has just been a way of getting us all to adopt the system and give them enough data that they can do it. That they've realized 20 years ago that it was impossible. They didn't have the know-how. You know, frankly, the machines probably weren't powerful enough yet, but we're very, very good now. And if you look at someone like Facebook, they've come in, they've been doing that pretty much from the start. And I think, you know, the edge is in the creative, definitely. But in terms of a credit card, an objective, and a website, that is pretty much what you give Facebook. And they have done what Larry and Sergey wanted to do 20 years ago. And the only reason Google are having a hard time getting people to let them do it that way is because they have to take away what they've given us across 2 decades. And people don't like that. I don't really like that.
Yeah, your Google ads, people love the data, don't they? And the Facebook ads, people just want to see that ROAS number going up, want to see the money coming in, going up, and that's all they're bothered about.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think the same applies to a lot of Google guys as well, mind. I think there's to be said for needing to see that big picture. You know, if you look at something like attribution, again, this is a little bit more sort of not for the general user, but if someone clicks on 3 or 4 ads before they finally buy the thing or sign up to whatever you're selling, then the credit has to be divvied out one way or another. And there's a lot of different ways you can prioritize the early clicks or the late clicks or whatever. And this is something where a lot of people, because they are driven by that, like, is there a 1 in the conversion column or is there a 0 and you decide it's worthless?
Yeah.
If it's an in the middle click somewhere, the bit that even Google admit they don't really understand, if you hear all that stuff about the messy middle, it might be more than contributing to the end game, but because the conversion says 0, your guy switches it off. Whereas Facebook have kind of almost obfuscated just enough data that you leave it on because you kind of get that it's helping, but not really.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there almost needs to be a little bit more open-mindedness from the Google ads guys to kind of let that happen.
Yeah.
But that's a very difficult thing to do. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's not linear, is it? This thing, like, people want perfect attribution. Joe Blogs, to throw a third Joe in there, clicked on X advert and converted, just, and it'd be a bang 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 conversion path, but it doesn't happen like that. Joe Foley, I know you changed, or you were wanting to change a client we were looking at and their attribution model. Where do you stand on attribution?
Oh yeah, definitely all for using a non-last click model that was obviously always the norm up until probably about 3-4 years ago, I think. Maybe a bit longer actually. So like Joe said, it doesn't give every single touch point on the path the credit that it deserves.
Yeah.
Initial interactions, if you cancel those out completely, then you've got no brand campaign conversions. Without the up funnel that you then have to sort of optimize and make more efficient as people get close to converting. But obviously, if you cancel out all that initial traffic, you're not going to have the traffic at the end as well. People are ready to convert. So we do need to give some credit to those initial interactions and those touch points in between. It could be, your display campaign that keeps you fresh in the mind, which then leads to people coming back and converting directly and things like that. So absolutely essential that you're operating on a non-last click attribution model, I think.
It's funny, isn't it, that the more complicated those conversion journeys get, in theory we're brilliant at crunching data and getting all these numbers, but it's only going to get harder and harder to do as people need more kind of encouragement and need to see you more times and build up that familiarity with you and the brand before they make the purchase. So it's only going to get more difficult. Let's separate it out a bit then. So long term, like, let's talk 10 years plus. Are we just moving literally and fully towards a set and forget Google Ads strategy? Is that what's going on here, do we think?
I think it's what Google want. Whether or not people buy into it is a different thing entirely.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at, if you're doing something a bit less e-com focused, you might use a bit in strategy like target CPA, where you give it a cost per conversion goal, and then you tweak on what you want to happen next. Do you want to get, more conversions at a higher cost or whatever it might be? And one guy that's very switched on, and he's being pushed to sort of adopt that in quite a big way. And there's pieces of it where he can't sort of do what he wants anymore. But if they take manual bids away and he's not allowed to do that and he has to do his target CPA, he'll do that, but he'll still have his layers upon layers of his own scripts, of his automation that he's written. And he's going to be changing those target CPAs hour by hour so that he can wrangle the machine into doing what he wants it to do. And so he is going to absolutely kind of do the manual approach to the bitterest end. And I'd like to know how many people like that are out there. Personally, I think that's that guy's been in the game for sort of 10 or 15 years. He's probably got enough of a grasp on things to do that. But I think if you're getting started right now, whether that's as a business owner who's getting into this or as someone that's doing it day to day for a job, like myself and Joe, I think if you're still fresh at it now, you've got to kind of lean into it, and you've got to do, at the end of the day, the people that were writing newspaper ads, your David Ogilvy's, your Claude Hopkins, these guys never had targeting. They didn't have attribution models. Wrote some absolutely fantastic stuff, and that's never going to be impossible. So if you're hanging on to it because you've got 15 years worth of data to kind of fight back against what Google are doing, then fair enough. But for your everyman that's just getting into it, there's a completely different way you can get good at this, and I think that's how your time's sort of better invested, really. Yeah.
So the message is, look, automation is coming. Let's might as well start embracing it.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, take it a step at a time. Google are very good at their optimization score that they're putting into accounts now, and they make recommendations for things, keywords you should add and bids you should change. If all the recommendations, your optimization score goes up, and if you kind of ignore them, then it can end up going down. Honestly, some of these recommendations are really poor. I wouldn't be
Okay.
accepted. But you know, by the rules of embracing all of it, you would sort of take that on, and your results would potentially get worse. So there's still that. You've got to know kind of what it's like.
Yeah.
You've got to know, you know, what it was like before there was automation, so that you can understand, okay, why did they think I should do this? Because it might be good advice, or it might be, you know, potentially worth completely ignoring.
Mm.
I think if we can, again, it comes down to, we can do the critical thought as people, and then let the machine do the legwork once we're sure the machine's doing the right thing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Foley, anything on that one? Anything in terms of just in general bracing automation and how it looks over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're just going to get left behind if you don't adopt it now, or if you already haven't adopted it. You know, if the majority of accounts that I've used have smart bidding or smart campaigns in, they do eventually hit the targets, they do start working, they do perform well, and then over time they've got all that data to work off. The machine learning gets better and better over time, so they're going to improve, whereas you're just going to stagnate and probably start to fall off a little bit if you're still running manual across the board. So yeah, I would definitely embrace it. And you know, you say sort of 10, 15 years time, like when I first got into PPC 5 years ago, like Joe said, there was a few people doing scripts and things like that to try and save a bit of time, but there was no smart bidding, there were no smart campaigns, and that was 5 years ago. So
it's moving
in 5 years, yeah, it's just so prevalent now. In another 5 years, it'll just be unrecognisable, I think. So yeah, I would definitely highly recommend that you start looking at it.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's good. I think if in general we're putting out that automation largely is a good thing, if computers can do the job better than you can do it, at the end of the day, just let them crack on with it. If it does become a case of putting your credit card in and it does the work, but it generates you a return of 6 or 7x on your advertising spend, what's the problem with that? For me, and I'd love to know if you both agree with this, people get a bit too bogged down in the data because it is available, but as long as you're bringing in more money than you are spending on your marketing or your advertising, surely that's a good thing. Whether it's, you know, generating a 0.1 better ROAS on Facebook versus Google ads, for example, does that matter, or can we look a little bit bigger picture?
Go on, I'll let you start because I've got a couple of thoughts on this.
I think you need to obviously monitor and sort of report back on where your money's going, where it's coming back, and things like that. But like I said, with the attribution models, things like that, we're able to analyse that a lot better now than perhaps were a few years ago. So yeah.
Go on then, Joe Robbo, you can wrap us up.
Go on then, yeah. I think Joel started on exactly where I would have went with this. Is there's something about inherently trusting the whole process from end to end, that based on the way it can work, it can backfire if you let it. So, you know, there's times when I think when smart shopping first got going in Google, so that was very much sort of, you had your shopping ads on the search page, and then your remarketing ads as well, so the banner ads that kind of follow you around the internet. It's all put into one. And so the results were brilliant, much better than your ordinary shopping, but there was a lot of, say, you know, brand traffic in there. So when people are searching for your business's name, they're ready to buy anyway, and Google would sort of sneak in and take the credit at the end. And then your remarketing is obviously a very profitable thing to do anyway. So if you kind of put goals in with the rest of it, you can make the numbers look a lot better than they are. And it got to a point where, for a while there, a lot of people were having to look at, is this lifting the overall picture? You know, is the whole Google account getting better? Is the whole website making more money? And there's always going to be that little bit of making sure that what you're doing is actually uplift for the overall picture. You know, I'm sure it was, I think again, it was Ogilvy that did some research, got way back in the middle of the 20th century, into a brand that was basically finding that whenever they advertised, their sales results went down. Now that was in the real world, but then I've seen more recently people that were remarketing and they were doing absolutely loads of it on the internet, like the way that everyone does at a really high level of budget. And they weren't sure if it was really making a difference. So what they did was they took half the banner ads and they swapped out the images for just like generic stuff. Just genuinely didn't look like it was advertising, didn't look like a piece of sales creative, just a generic image. And they kept running the ads and they put thousands of pounds into it. And at the end, the generic images had made 3/4 as much money as the general remarketing.
Okay.
They realized it was just a load of crap. Like that advertising had no real benefit for their business based on what like a control group of irrelevant stuff had done.
Yeah.
So they had to kind of get rid of it. And at the top level, we're usually going to be able to kind of do most of that stuff. You could do it on Facebook just the same. So I think as long as we're keeping our wits about us and making sure that at the very top level, we're checking like, okay, like, yes, the ROAS in the account is good, but is it actually making my life better? Is it actually moving my business forward? You ask that question, and that's not always easy. Maybe that's what agencies will get paid to do in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
But one way or another, I think that you're all right to put a bit of trust into it, because it is getting better and better, and it's just doing what we could do in 1/10 of the time, because it's a genius machine.
Mm-hmm. So trust it, guys, is the message.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do we, if we are trusting it and Google Ads really is doing all the work, like how do we as an agency justify our fee in 5 years' time? Just to put you both on the spot.
I'm always going to think it's creative. I'm bang that drum until it's not there anymore. You can ask Google to write the ads as well at the minute, and you'll wish you hadn't.
Okay.
Pretty awful. I had a client last year at a previous agency I worked at, where they had a copyright agreement with a supplier. Basically, they sold something where there's kind of like a leading brand, and these guys sold something that was interchangeable with the leading brand, but had nothing to do with them. So they were allowed to use the brand name in like certain places to say, you know, it's compatible with.
Yeah.
But they weren't allowed to make specific comparisons because it was deemed in breach of copyright. And just before I took on this account, someone tried to do something where Google writes the ads for you. And what happened was they picked up on this copyright word and saw that it was high intent and was engaged with a lot, and it put like it shouldn't have. And these guys nearly got sued to the tune of about 5 figures, you know? So even where the ads are compelling, there's still a lot of margin for error.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things in the world, in the real world. I used to work at Nissan in a car factory, and as many robots as they've got, there's still a few humans there to make sure the robots behave themselves, you know? And it's going to go exactly the same way, I think.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Joe Foley? Do you agree that the robots are coming for our jobs?
It's funny you should say that. A mate of mine actually works at Nissan, and his job is to work out how they can automate a lot of their processes. So it's quite funny that should have been mentioned. Yeah, and with Joe said, the creative side of things, and the strategy. When you're deciding which brands are worth pushing, and how we display them. Looking at sort of like conversion rate optimization of your website, improving that process. A lot of competitor analysis, more in and things like that. So there's plenty of things that you'll be able to do, which will then be able to, I believe, like uplift performance across your website, across your business, and have a lot more value than just doing a few hours a week in your Google Ads account.
So there's always going to be something to do. You'll not be out of a job just yet.
Oh, not just yet, no.
All right, boys. I really enjoyed that. Thanks for your time.
No worries. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Cheers.